Well, it's been a long week around here. I haven't complained about it much because I tend to suffer in silence, but Joe has been gone for the entirety of June, leaving me here alone, suffering in pain and agony. Really an existential dread. And if I look as bad as I feel, it's probably because my suffering was increased this week as I had to watch the entire Child's Play series. But it's all right. I did this because and Helic is a huge fan of the series. I've not seen them in a long time, and I figured it was ripe to catch up on the series till I could see the new movie and review that as well. So I guess now I do that.
I don't know what to say.
Like I said, I pulled no punches in reviewing this movie. I did go back and we watched all 7 of the original Child's Play movies in the span of one day, which I'm still recovering from. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Child's Play series and stumbled here because they didn't read the title, here's a quick summary of what we're talking about. Child's Play is famously a horror slasher series featuring a little doll named Chucky, our little buddy, who well, it's a whole long story. Let's get into that real quick. Child's Play 1, Brad Dourif, phenomenal actor. You might remember him from One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest. Well, he's a serial killer now, and he's on the run from the police in the beginning of this film. And right before he eats it by being shot several times by a horrible law enforcement officer, horrible because he's just a horrible actor. I'm sure he's on the level cop. I mean, look at the way he dresses. He wears sweater vests. I mean, who could possibly be evil and wear a sweater?
My name is Koos van den Akker. Part of my legacy in this business is making the Bill Cosby sweater.
So he fusses with those women.
I think that's an appropriate joke. Anyway, Brad Dourif is about to die, and so because he knows some ancient voodoo ritual spells, he's able to transfer his soul, his spirit, his essence, his evil, killing demeanor into a little adorable doll named Chucky. And for whatever reason, because voodoo summons lightning bolts, the doll is absconded with by a hobo who then sells it to a desperate mother just looking to take care of her son for Christmas. Of course, buying a demonic possessed doll, fostering the spirit of a serial killer is not always a great idea. And so Chucky, throughout the course of this movie, begins to manipulate the little boy, murder people as he is wont to do, and gain revenge on those who betrayed him in life. It's an alright film. It's pretty serviceable. You get exactly what you come for. And the biggest thing, which is a trend in this series, is the movies are all relatively short, about an hour and a half, sometimes a little shorter than that, and that's probably the only reason we made it through all 7. Child's Play 2. Well, the mother is gone now because presumably she wanted a better script, and now young Andy, the boy who fostered Chucky, lives in perpetual fear as he enters the foster care system that Chucky will one day find him and come to finish the job he started. Because as we learn in Child's Play 1, the only way that Chucky can go back to being a human being is to somehow get his soul into the body of the first person he admitted his actual identity to. In this case, it's a really obnoxious child named Andy. It's bizarre because the whole series really revolves around the stupidest people being around Andy because it's like a 2-foot-tall doll. And to be killed by that in the earlier ones where he doesn't have like superpowers and super strength, it's just embarrassing, quite frankly. Child's Play 3, released in the same year. Now Andy has somehow aged 8 years. It takes place several years later. Andy has bounced around the foster care system and is now at a military academy because they're just trying to beat some sense into the boy, some structure, if you will. But of course, Chucky is reborn yet again and follows him to this military academy. It's a really, really awful film. The 4th film in the series, Bride of Chucky, is sort of an interesting reboot and a new look at the series. Andy is no longer really involved. Chucky has found his way back to his former lover's arms. That was Jennifer Tilly, who was Brad Dourif's lover in life pre-evil Pinocchio. And long story short, Jennifer Tilly becomes a doll too, and they're now off on a murderous rampage trying to get their bodies back. It's actually pretty entertaining. It's a Ronnie Yu horror film, so it's pretty pretty. It's well stylized, and it starts to embrace some of the comedy of the situation, and actually, after watching the first 3, was a welcome change to the formula in the franchise. I actually enjoyed it a good deal. The 5th movie, Seed of Chucky, is a giant piece of shit. It's got John Waters. It's like this whole meta bullshit. It's giving like a semen sample. It's just, I never needed to see Chucky jerk off. The sixth film is The Curse of Chucky. It's a straight-to-DVD release starring Brad Dourif's daughter. It's actually pretty interesting. It, again, for a while you're not really sure if it even ties into the previous 5 films. Direct-to-video movies don't always have to tie in. Sometimes it's just a cheap cash grab. This is actually interesting. It's a smaller budget, as is the nature of direct-to-video, but it's kind of a fun, kind of a mystery film with some interesting characterization, and Chucky has a new kind of look to him. It was enjoyable in some ways, and again, it was a nice kind of change on the formula after the 5th movie just ate so much shit. Finally, the 7th movie is Cult of Chucky, where your survivors are now in a mental home. Hard to believe after they've been stalked by a possessed doll, and then Chucky comes after them, and it gets a lot of really good reviews. I was actually really excited for it because like the Rotten Tomatoes score is the highest of the series. It's really pretty. There's some interesting subplots. Some things drag on a bit. The acting is okay in some parts. The ending is good, but for the most part, I was pretty disappointed. Where does that leave us? Well, it's a series that has kind of been rebooted in some ways twice, even though it maintains canon, with Chucky pretty much being the same character and always voiced by Brad Dourif. And the new remake came out this week, starring Mark Hamill as the new Chucky, and I didn't really know what to expect. I watched the trailer, kind of incidentally because it was playing before Rocket Man. I knew that they were going to change it up because Chucky is not now the same type of malevolent character, and the nature of the doll itself has changed. They do a lot more with technology and sort of the AI learning process. So I was curious to see like what they would do with that. And now that you have the context of the last films, I can kind of compare for you the characters really briefly. Again, the first series, this evil serial killer who is able to transfer his soul into this doll through voodoo, and then is seeking to kill this child because he needs his body as a vessel, as a vehicle. And in the new one, it's a doll that has safety features turned off, but by an angry programmer. That's it. And if it sounds underwhelming, it certainly felt that way. It raises the natural question of why the fuck you would program a doll to have kill features in the first place. But it's an interesting cast. Ty Consiglio is a really good young actor. Aubrey Plaza plays the mother in this case. And Tim Matheson has sort of a recurring role as the CEO of this company. He's interesting. I'd like to see him pop up on occasion. He was great in Animal House. It's been a while since then, though. So it's not a poorly acted film, get that out of the way right up front. Aubrey Plaza is actually pretty good, shows some range in this, and Ty Consiglio is a fantastic, young kid in peril, especially compared to the earlier, embodiments of Andy, which was just painful to watch in your typical I hate kids in horror movies kind of process. But the biggest thing and why I compliment Ty Consiglio's performance is the nature of this Chucky is so different. And right up front, I would like to quote my girlfriend who made a really good observation. This is, in case you're curious about this and this is your kind of thing, the least fuckable Chucky in the franchise. That's just a fact. I'm sorry, ladies. He's just not a looker. But what's interesting about this Chucky is that really, as opposed to him being a malevolent creature bent on destruction and murder for murder's sake, this really is just a toy or a machine with a really malformed adaptive learning system. And so as this is basically a child with severe autonomy that is observing how people interact, what movies they watch, what he perceives to be the norm in society, you kind of understand how he doesn't really understand social mores, and how occasionally what he thinks of as funny, because people will laugh while watching a horror movie, is not funny in real life. And that's something that we can really empathize with. And as the movie goes on, he really does just want to do what's best for his buddy, for Andy. And in a weird way, it makes this Chucky really an empathetic character. And when bad things happen, it's really more of kind of a lack of his comprehension and understanding. It's really more of like, raising an attack dog that goes mad. And in many ways, it's just an adorable little tyke who doesn't know what's what. In a way, though, it does take away from Mark Hamill's presence. A lot of people were bummed out that it wasn't Brad Dourif voicing this character and that it was Mark Hamill. I gotta say, it could have been anybody. What the voice does really effectively is kind of make the character kind of cute and adorable, and you do kind of feel bad for him, especially in the way that he communicates. And what's interesting about that to me is it's not really in the mannerisms or in how the character is postured. In other words, it's not a lot of physical acting. And that makes sense because Mark Hamill didn't come in until way late in the production process just to dub over the voice. So it could have been anybody. But what he's able to do with that character and what he's able to project out through that voice really does create an interesting Chucky doll. But the biggest thing is I couldn't help but feel like it's a really good Black Mirror or Twilight Zone episode that was almost not well suited to be given the Child's Play moniker. I mean, it's so different in a good way that it almost felt held back by that expectation that it had to be part of that mythos. I don't really know where I stand on that. I think it's cool that they gave the writer a lot of freedom to do something new. They did, and in many ways it works. So all of that said, was this a good movie? It's ridiculous, I can tell you that much. You do go through the same process of the first however many movies of trying to convince people that this doll is real and that there's a threat there, but the nature of this threat is so much more reasonable that it doesn't take the characters as long to kind of catch on, and as the audience, you're not as frustrated and you're not kind of trying to figure out if it makes sense for characters to act how they do, because we can all kind of imagine an AI that goes rogue, right? I mean, it's kind of a common paranoia. It's a technophobia, as it were. And in this movie, it does play out pretty well. There's not a lot of violence. When there is, it's pretty graphic, which you kind of expect with this series. And it does maintain some of that comedy that the original series had, but where I perceive the original series as being sort of dark comedy or even mean-spirited, because the character is so neutral, or the character is definitely justified in his own motivations. The comedy really is just something that is resigned for the actors and the kids outside of the dangerous situations. And in that sense, it's funny in the same way that, say, A Stranger Things is funny, or how moments of levity in Get Out are funny. It's not really trying to mix the horror and comedy as much as give you a breather as the audience. So for the most part, I actually did enjoy this. It's exactly what I expected, which is a pretty decent movie to go to the theater, have a couple drinks, and just sit back and watch the madness unfold. I do think in a weird way, the original movie, as crazy and bizarre and in some ways stupid as it was, that plot I think has less plot holes in it just because it really sets its own rules. It's a guy, there's this voodoo thing, here are the voodoo rules. Great, I'm not a voodoo expert. I guess that works. A salud. But when you go into this movie and it's just this angry programmer who goes, oh, I'm gonna make the doll not have his safety toggled on. You just kind of go like, why is that even there? Maybe I missed something with that, but it really did seem like it was just kind of the only moment in the film where they went, fuck it, it's Child's Play. Just enjoy the movie. It's gonna be a killer doll. What do you want from us? But it does use technology in an interesting way. It is an interesting story. I'm curious to see how they build the inevitable franchise out of it. I don't think that it necessarily has the legs of the original, but I'm very curious to see what they do. And the biggest thing I would say about this is when you're comparing this to the originals, the biggest thing that stands out is the quality of the acting, and then to an extent, obviously, the writing and the dialogue and how those characters interact. So I enjoyed myself. I thought it was a serviceable movie. For people like my girlfriend or my good friend Josh, shout out South Carolina, how you doing? People who love Chucky, people who love that evil little shit doll in kind of that Freddy Krueger way with the one-liners and that personality, it's really not that. And if you're looking for that, the bad news is you're not going to get it, but the good news is you're not going to get that or an attempt at it. This is a really interesting standalone movie, and even now, knowing what that little bastard did, I feel bad for him. I want to finish this review and go off and sing the "You Are My Buddy" song. If you're someone who likes horror, it's a good one. It's definitely more creative than a lot of the reboots that you see. I thought it was way better than Pet Sematary. It's not on the level of something where I'd say like it's genre changing or it pushes at conventions. It's not quite as clever as a Black Mirror, and it's not as horror as a Babadook, but it's somewhere kind of in between there. So it's the best example of if you've got 2 hours and a couple bucks to spare, this is definitely something that I think a lot of people would enjoy. But with Joe being gone, I do miss my buddy. You are my buddy. You are my I don't know the rest of the words. Fuck. This is why I need a Joe. God damn it. Could Google it.